Everybody, and welcome back to our final 2021 Facebook Live Did You Know? I want to thank all of you for joining us over this last year. And again, please send in your questions and don't forget to like and hit the notification to stay connected to the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. Did you know that the Washoe County Sheriff's Office is celebrating its 160th anniversary this month? I know we don't look over 25, but many people don't know that the Washoe County Sheriff's Office is actually almost 2 years older than the state of Nevada. We were established in 1861, and our anniversary is December 26th, one day after Christmas. And as in 1861 with our first sheriff, Charles C. Smith, I continue to be the chief law enforcement officer in the county, overseeing the only full service law enforcement agency within the county. My responsibilities are maintaining the consolidated. Are we going? Oh, we are. Okay. Sorry, I didn't know if we were on. I apologize for that. So my responsibilities are maintaining the consolidated detention facility, civil processing, keeping the peace and quelling all riots, which is our patrol and investigative side, bailiffs in district court, and search and rescue, while also coordinating over 750 employees and 400 volunteers that include our search and rescue and our Citizen Corps program. So what better way to celebrate our 160th anniversary than to have and talk to people who have been in my shoes, or for someone who is so passionate about preserving the history of law enforcement, not only in our region, in the state, but throughout the nation. So I am absolutely honored today to be joined by former sheriffs Mike Haley and Chuck Allen, and retired captain turned historian Doug Giss. So gentlemen, thank you guys for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what I thought we'd do today is just kind of relish what you guys did, where you guys are at, why you guys joined law enforcement. And, you know, for Doug, you have some great things here we want to share of the history of not only the sheriff's office, but I know your collection over the years has grown. I know it's kind of shrinked over the last, but you had a wealth of knowledge when it came to law enforcement history. So let me start over here and then we'll just work around with the questions. So, Chuck Allen, tell the people how many years of service you did and what have you been doing since retirement?
Well, I started, Darren, thank you for the interview today. And I started my law enforcement career by joining the United States Air Force back in 1984. I aspired to be a law enforcement officer. And then when I moved to Nevada in 1987, I continued my service in the Air Guard and became a reserve officer for Reno, and ultimately became a highway patrolman and served in that capacity for 25 years and continued in the Guard and culminated almost 60 years of service. But the thought of becoming sheriff, it was something that resonated with me for a while. I looked at the timing, obviously. Mike wasn't running again. I didn't honestly know who was. And I thought, and hopefully we'll get into more discussion, but you have to ask yourself, why not me? Sometimes you have to ask that question. And after retirement, I thought I would never put another uniform on again. I had collected enough, but I'm currently working as a lieutenant marshal with the Nevada Supreme Court down in Carson City.
Awesome.
So it's a nice retirement setup down there. I'm really having fun with that right now.
Perfect. So Mike, how about you? How many years? And what have you been doing? I know, again, like Chuck, you've been busy in retirement.
I have. I got into this business quite by accident. I joined the military to active duty, spent 12 years, spent time in college and graduated from university, and got into public safety quite by accident. I needed a job. The GI Bill wasn't paying all the bills. So I became a police officer in Missouri. And I spent 4 years as a police officer in Missouri before I graduated and came out to California, actually, and subsequently moved to Nevada and started on, I might say, the 119th anniversary of the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. So lucky, get a job, worked at the old jail, helped build this facility, helped run the academy, built many new projects in the Sheriff's Office. When I retired, I started a company called Secure Communications, And I'm now in Australia, United Kingdom, and the United States in a very large company.
So you're traveling a lot.
Traveling a lot. Australia, COVID obviously put us down for a while, but I travel to both Australia and to the United Kingdom often.
Awesome. So you guys are busy. So Doug, tell us
Where do I
how many.
start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, gee, I came on as a reserve, the academy in 1978. 79, got hired out of the academy as a career deputy. Did 25 years. Always attached to history, though, and there's a story behind that. But did 25 years here, retired as a captain overseeing patrol at the time. Consulted for the Interact Business Group, following being involved in the training center development here. Did that for a couple of years and decided I was done traveling. And I chased a dream of opening a museum. And that museum was the Silver State National Peace Officers Museum in Virginia City. And we were open 7 seasons, 7 years. And it just really could not sustain itself. So it was a tough decision, but we did close the doors.
And I know we were talking before, and just kind of so people understand the collection. How many badges did you have in that collection?
About 10,000 from all over the country, dating back as far as 1845. There were quite a few that were that early, and a lot of local pieces. Like this one. This one dates back in our county to 1882, and it was made from Nevada gold. But the collection was so much more than that, because there's photos and posters and things, just things, tools of the trade that go way back as part of history. And there's a life that's attached to every one of these. There's a story, there's a warm breathing person at that time that had a lot to do with developing this profession to what it is today.
And I know this is one question we always ask, because we all have been involved in our careers of hiring. And when new recruits come in, it's probably one of the ones we always anticipate, but I think that the public should know. And I'll start with you, Doug. Why did you get in law enforcement? What drove you to go into this profession?
Well, I was a second generation in law enforcement for my family. And so that pretty much paved the way. I played firefighter for a while, but this was my career choice. And so between the two of us, my dad and I, we put 50 years in. So that's a pretty significant contribution, I think, to public safety.
Absolutely. Mike, besides just by happenstance, any other drive of why you jumped into this?
Well, I'm second generation also, and my dad passed away when I was 20, and I was in the military at the time. And when I was in college, I had said earlier that I needed extra income, so I applied to be a deputy or a police officer. And I liked it so much that when I got out of college, I kept pursuing it and landed here as a deputy. And the old jail that Doug worked in and was a fabulous place to learn. But what was so unique about our experience, Doug and I, is that we went from just a few officers to over 800. And we experienced every facet of that growth. So our 25, 35 years went fast.
Well, and I caught some because, again, all of us have been in law enforcement, second generation. So 3 of us. Are you second generation,
No,
Chuck?
I broke that mold there.
You broke the mold. But did you start before you were 21?
No, unlike my peers, I spent many years in the military,
Okay.
4 years in college. So I was older than most people when I got here. And so I had to do 35 years just to catch up to everything.
And Chuck, how about you? I mean, you were in the military, but I mean, anything that drove you?
No, I mean, jokingly, I could say, maybe Adam 12 had something to do with it. But no, I just always had a desire to serve. And what most people don't know about me is I spent 6 months in the seminary wanting to be a Catholic priest at one time in my life. And that I honestly, I guess that's not it wasn't a solid calling. Otherwise, I'd be there today. But just picked law enforcement as a career and a profession.
And I'd have to agree with you. That's why I joined. Is it's it's one of those things besides following, and you're around it when your family members in it, so you grow up in there. But it's all about, I think we've heard that theme here today. It's making that impact, making that difference in our community. And so with that, I'll start with you, Chuck. Another question, because law enforcement's changed in the last 4 decades, and it's really changed. I think we're seeing another evolution over this last year. So what, as sheriff, when you were here or in your whole career, what were some of the challenges that you faced?
Well, I think a lot of it, Darren, is just being able to tell your story, not so much as the sheriff, but as of your agency, on what we do every day. And it was really important for me to have deputies and our civilian staff, our volunteers, just really involved in the community. And I just felt that was an important part. And I think sometimes you're dealt the deck of cards that you don't want. But by nature, you can't control what calls for service you're sent to and some of the issues that you're faced with. But it's how you deal with it and how you move forward from it.
I'd agree. Like a pandemic.
Right.
Like a pandemic. Mike, how about you?
Well,
we had several growths.
We did.
In your time.
Starting in a very small jail, and every day since that day has been challenged by growth, by ensuring that we had diversity, by ensuring that we hired enough people, by creating our own academies, by building this facility, by building the area crime evaluation system, the NNCTC, the Research and Development Center. All of those things grew out of moving from a small organization to here. My career never stopped for a moment in moving forward, and it was an exciting time.
And Doug, how about you?
The changes are dramatic if you look from when I started to today. I mean, we had 150, I think, total personnel when I started. The old jail, it was an incredible adventure to work in. I mean, I remember working graveyard in that jail and almost nightly fires and fights, and the inmate count was so far over our capacity that we had to get beyond that, and it took some time to do. But staffing wasn't what it needed to be to take care of that many inmates, so it was pretty incredible. It really was. And when we saw this facility open, it was light years ahead, and we had room and we had sufficient space for the inmates, at least at the time. But we've seen drastic increase in size since then. And technology has come so far from the day that this was communication for a cop on the street to radios and cell phones. We saw all of those things, the communications things that even when I started, we didn't have good communication, but they do today on the street. It's just phenomenal.
And I would agree with you. And some things that we've built upon because of all of you guys, that foundation is, one is technology. Some of the stuff that we can do now, if you're looking at a patrol car, you wonder how they can keep their attention with the dash camera,
Right.
the computer, the radar. Now they have the lights that are automatic, so you're not having to do the twist spotlights, to just pulling the data that we share and evaluating through the area crime evaluation system of, now we've moved to stratified of where are our hotspots, because the same theme that you guys mentioned is the same thing we're experiencing now, and that's staffing, right? Our growth, as we just saw, we're up just under 500,000 in this community, but we're still trying to catch up. Some of it, unfortunately, as in your tenure, we experienced the recession that we hadn't experienced in years. And then, Chuck, you had to start coming out of that recession. You were here some of that. And then now I step in and we have a pandemic that none of us experienced. But some of the things, I just want to brag because you guys were all part of that, is when this facility was built, it was the state of the art. It was one of the best in the nation, and we were progressive and doing stuff with our direct supervision and not linear where, the deputies weren't in there, they were in there. And, a lot of times we'll bring people in and they'll walk into those units and they can't believe the deputies are in with the inmates. But we just found out today, some of our stats. So we just started a medical assisted treatment program, a MAT program, last year. So we're one of the few in the nation. I think we're under 20 in the nation that have that. And the data so far is 5% of those individuals that are in that program have come back. And so talking with our medical provider just 3 months ago, we became an opioid treatment program. And that program has been so successful because of the work that you guys did before leading up to this. We're a model for the West Coast. And now we have agencies like when you guys built this facility. I remember hearing, but when I started and I'd see it as a deputy, and you saw it, Chuck, even people from around the world would come and tour this facility and all of the stuff we're doing on the outside. And I think that's important for our viewers out there to know, especially in this time, is this profession is great. And that's what I want to end with before we go over some of your history items is, right now, yesterday we were very fortunate. The county commission gave us, 22 new positions, 20 deputies and 2 sergeants. And we're going to go out and recruit for those. But what advice, and I'll start with you, Chuck.
Okay.
We went with Doug first. Yeah. What advice would you give somebody that's looking to go into law enforcement with everything that's going on, police reform, pandemic, all that's going on? Why get into this profession?
Right. You got to follow your heart, and you got to want to get out there and be yourself and want to wear that badge proudly. And don't be afraid of the negative media that's out there. I know this profession has been scrutinized by a handful of people who have made some pretty bad mistakes. And not all cops are like that. And as long as you do the right thing every single day, and I used to say to people, look at yourself in the rearview mirror when you pull into your driveway and ask yourself, did you give your city, did you give your county, did you give your state an honest day's work for an honest day's pay? And if you can nod your head, you're doing the right thing. And if you do that every day, you have nothing to worry about.
Absolutely. That's great advice. Mike, what would you give somebody?
It's, as I agree with Chuck about being in your heart and having a drive and determination to do this, but it's bigger than that. It's a chance to be at the core of your community, to influence your community, to be able to tackle the challenges that your community has, to be a voice, to ensure that the community you live in is a safe and vibrant place to live in. I would just tell people coming into this profession that it is one of the most exciting things that you can do in your lifetime.
Absolutely. Doug?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Mike. And, there's bumps in the road in law enforcement right now. We've been through this before. And I remember when there was an incident that happened in Los Angeles many years ago that resulted in every time we did a traffic stop, somebody was jumping out with a video camera to take film and hopefully get some sensation out of it. But what they found was us doing our jobs. And that's the way it needs to be. Things cycle through, and where law enforcement may not be feeling the support they need right now, that's going to come around. And I think it's going to come around pretty quickly because it just has to for the safety of the community. But this is a profession, and some guys will go into it to save the world. Well, you're not going to save the world, but you're going to have an opportunity to save some lives. You're going to have an opportunity to hopefully steer some kids away from taking the wrong turns in life. And you're going to have an opportunity to make people feel a little safer in their world. And I think that really is what it's all about. At least it needs to be. It is a passion. And it's got to be. For you to do it right, you got to have a passion for it.
Absolutely. Not, I would agree with everything that's been said. It's about doing the right thing, and we're going to have our bumps. And I've been telling people, that this community, we're not perfect, but when we've gone out, so many people have come up. We hear it all the time, thanking our deputies for what they do. We just did Shop of the Sheriff that all of us participated in, 250 children. And that's what it's about, keeping this community safe, because we all have families here. We want our kids to stay hopefully here and not move away, so we have to travel, right? And we get to enjoy grandkids, and they can play outside and do everything that we enjoy to this community. But it's also about, and that's what I think sometimes people think and forget about, it's not just about arresting people all the time. It's about that impact. It's about that child that you shop with or you stop, and then later on, maybe a year, maybe a couple years later, they stop you on the road and they say, you remember you took that time to talk to me and tell me about, what they've done. I met a man, and we remember this Project Walkabout. that we had here, the boot camp that Sheriff Kirkland, who wasn't unable to join us today, started. And I had some tile work done last year. And so the tile gentleman was tiling my house, and all of a sudden he realized that he saw some photos in there that I was in law enforcement. And as we started talking, he brought up he was the first person in his family to buy a house. And what he related that to was Camp Walkabout was what changed. He'd been incarcerated, been in trouble, but when he went through that program, that's what changed his life. And he was the first one in his family. And that, I think, is, besides everything else we've said here, that's what it's about.
It is.
That's what it's done in this badge and uniform is. And so
Absolutely.
I'd like you to highlight just a couple. Again, you know, we've talked about, you had a full museum, but what is one of the most favorite pieces that you still have that maybe you have here or not?
Oh, wow. You know, there's so many of them because, like I said, they were all worn by somebody. They all had somebody with that passion doing that job somewhere along the way. And this badge is actually gold, and it was worn by J. Frank Emmett back in 1882, made from Nevada Gold, mined here. J. Frank Emmett went on to be the U.S. Marshal for the District of Nevada. And this was passed on to William Collin of the Collin Ranch fame. He became sheriff in the 1890s. He in turn passed it on to Charlie Farrell, who was sheriff shortly after the turn of the century to the 1920s, if I remember the dates right. At some point, Charlie Farrell was presented his own very nice custom-made badge, and this went back to the Collin, to William Collin's family. And but it's got a phenomenal history, and I've researched these guys a lot. And like Farrell, I mean, this is not something most sheriffs have. This is his saddle stamp because he was a blacksmith by trade, and so he would stamp saddles, stamp metal plate with his name on it if it belonged to him, or whatever, and kind of a unique thing. I've got so many of them. I mean, this badge actually belonged to William Kelly, and I interviewed him when he was 90 years old before he passed away. He was a traffic officer for the sheriff's office, a deputy sheriff, and he was also related to other law enforcement in this valley later on in years. But Bill Kelly, he passed away shortly after that, and I looked for years for his badge to go with a photo that I have of him. And just recently here, I found it, and I know it's his
Motor cop.
because his name is on the back of it. It even has his home address on the back of it. So this was Bill Kelly back in 1925, and that picture was taken up on the hill where the mansions are, the old mansions on California Avenue.
Wow.
Back in 1925, and this is the badge he's wearing in that picture. So, having interviewed him, and he told me some wonderful stories. What a blast! I just, it's fascinating to me. And when you think about it, we have radios and computers and all of this technology today. This would have been all he would have had was a whistle around his wrist, and that's how he would signal other people that he needed something or needed help or wanted somebody to stop. Incredible changes in our lifetimes and his. And
What's your favorite story? Or do you have one? You may probably have a lot, but
I do. And Bill Kelly's story was this motorcycle, which was a 1925 Excelsior Henderson. It was an 8-cylinder bike, as I recall. Lakeside and Holcomb, that loop street back there in the estate area back there, was dirt during the day. And his beat was also to the top of Mount Rose, which was a dirt road, a dirt highway. He told me a story back in the 20s when he was chasing a bootlegger down Holcomb Lane and hit some dust and lost control of the bike and crashed it and had to load it into the back of a truck and get hauled into town with his bike in disrepair. And I don't think he got the bootlegger either. But, you know, when you think about it, I mean, these guys worked by themselves. That was it. They didn't have a radio to call for help. They had none of the tools that the guys have today other than a revolver, some handcuffs, and a whistle. That was it.
That was it.
Pretty incredible.
do you have a favorite memory?
Well, I just, actually, there's so many memories, and Brooke will have a hard time with me if I talk about them all. But I just want to do two things. This badge is what I received when I retired from the sheriff's office. And it was given to me by the Washoe County Deputies Association. So I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart for doing that. And I'll take the liberty, because I used to be the sheriff, to give a shout out to my son who is working in the detention facility.
Awesome. Chuck.
Well, I have got a lot of stories, but probably not enough time to tell one. But just serving as sheriff was just a tremendous honor. And I had you're given opportunities in this position that not many people have the chance to. I mean, met two former presidents, numerous other electeds, and hosted a big conference here, and had the mentorship of some pretty high profile sheriffs. And it was a true honor to be in this career. And what a way to culminate a law enforcement career.
I'd agree. And I think for me, like everybody, right? We have a lot of years. For me so far, I think one of the greatest memories is Shop with the Sheriff. That was started by my dad when he was sheriff, and every year watching those kids, it just warms your heart. And I think that for me is probably one of the favorite things I look for every year, and just the memories. This year, we had 3 wonderful kids, and one, Jazzy, who had special needs, and to watch her and listen to her story of how her parents were told she wouldn't walk or talk, and she walked the entire Walmart holding on a shopping cart, and she could communicate. That's what it's about. So I want to thank you guys for joining me, and on behalf of myself, I'd like to give you a coin each.
Well, thank you very much. Are these numbered? Because I want to get that.
Only if I can wear this gold badge over here. It may not come back, but and then Doug, for your collection, just a new updated Sheriff one for you. And for everybody out there, I just want to remind you, this Sunday, we're going to release on Facebook a video of previous sheriffs. There's 4 of us that are still living, talking about our careers. And then the following week, on December 26th, our e-history book will be available. And it's Doug gave a lot of that information to us and helped us. It's a culmination, the history of the Washoe County Sheriff's Office, and our 160th anniversary on that day. So please go out there, grab one, learn about the history of the Sheriff's Office. And I want to thank all of you for joining us today. And on behalf of us here and all the men and women of the Washoe County Sheriff's Office, I want to wish you a safe Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we will meet you here, same place, same time next year. And again, please don't forget to send in your questions, even if it's not related to history. But if you have some history questions, I have the people here to answer those questions, especially Doug on a lot of the long history. Hit like and hit your notifications so you stay connected to the Sheriff's Office. And I will see you in 2022. Thank you.